Just doing the sync thing, setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. This is Martin Cordner. Welcome to Composer Meets. And tonight we've got Composer Meets Conductor. And I'm really thrilled and honored to have Derek Lance here on the live stream tonight. I'm going to give you all a wave because some of you might be seeing this in your news feed, and I'm just going to encourage you to click watch and come and join the stream. As we've done the last few weeks, Derek and I are going to just talk really, and we've got lots of things to talk about. We're going to talk about the New York Staff Band. We're going to talk about the USA Eastern Territory, for which Derek is the Territorial Music Secretary for the Salvation Army, and in particular their investment in young people, which is a really awesome thing. So we're going to talk about that, hopefully. We're also going to talk about, as this is called Composer Meets Conductor, the relationship between a composer and a conductor, and just get some thoughts around that. That could be a fun one, Derek, I think. So if you're just joining us, welcome. Do leave a comment and we'll be able to give you a shout out. So you can just say hello if you like, or you can ask a question, whether it's from myself or Derek, and we'll try and get to your comments as we go through this next hour. And we're going to wrap up around about 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So Derek, great to have you here with us. Good evening, good afternoon.
Whatever it is right now, right? Well, it's great to be here with you, and for me, it's nice to be on the opposite side of one of these, for a moment. Obviously, we've been doing a chunk of these things for our territory and beyond, so it's nice to I guess not be asking the questions for one day, and all the pressure's on me this time, So.
I guess it is, Derek. That's right. So just before we came on air tonight, we were just talking about lockdown, the frustrations of it, the challenges of it, some of the blessings maybe as well. It's not all been bad news. It's been bad news for a lot of people who have been ill, obviously. But for those of us who have found ourselves trapped in our houses, we've had a new way of looking at life, really, haven't we? So tell everybody, how's things been for the Lance family, for you and your lovely wife Lorena and the two girls? How have you been getting on?
Yeah, I think I guess like everybody else, you're just kind of going with it, and you're kind of making it work for for the family. We're very lucky that both Lorena and I have been able to keep working through all this time, which is great. Obviously, like everyone else, the girls have been out of school. Right now they're on summer break, but it doesn't really feel that different than the end of the school year. And in a few weeks' time, they'll go back to school, which they'll go back to the computer for a little while. So yeah, it's been an adventure, but I think for us, I don't want to say the positive thing about it, but some of the pluses to it is that we live very busy lives. So obviously, with all the things that we're involved with in the Army, Lorena's also in the staff band with me. So we, kind of have all these good things going on all the time. We have our Knights of the Corps, where we don't really get a whole lot of, break time or just, nights at home, with the family. So early on, one of the things this might sound weird, but I was able to kind of make dinner for a month straight, and you never really get a chance to do that because you're kind of, okay, we got to stop it wherever on the way to the Corps or whatever it might be doing. So to be able to do that, kind of just being able to have meals at home with the family is a sort of an abnormal thing for us.
Yeah.
And I'd say this is I guess once again a bizarro thing, but I think the most positive thing for us and our family was early on, we kind of committed to every night we were going to watch a movie, as a family, and we worked our way through all of the Marvel movies. So we watched all of those, kind of one a night, for a long time. And that was really awesome. So in terms of, something, great for our family, that was really cool to every night kind of have that thing to look forward to, so, getting through dinner time. Okay, well, what's the next movie for tomorrow night? And so that's been really, really good. It's been different for everyone, obviously, but great to be home with everyone a little bit more than maybe normal. And then I guess there's more to go on that, I guess in a professional way, but just for the family, really kind of added, time set aside for us, both for, kind of meeting around the dinner table, and
Yeah.
also just be able to, to kind of engage in a new way that maybe we wouldn't have that time normally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is such a time of mixed blessings in a way, but
Yeah.
that family blessing, I think, has been so special, and I've heard so many people say that I've heard one guy say, my wife and I have seen each other 7 nights a week.
Yeah.
So we've got to look on the plus side, I guess, with some of these things. But good, good. Glad to hear a little bit about your situation. We've already had our first hello in the chat, and it's Glenn and Wanda Giles from Halifax, Nova Scotia. So welcome to you, and thanks for watching. They're at Fairview Citadel Court. Have you ever been there, Derek?
No, no.
Me neither. I'd love to get there. Nova
Someday.
Scotia just sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I did get to come over to see you a few years ago, and that's where I think we first met. Would that be right? When Leanne and me came to Star Lake 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We had a fantastic time with you guys. Why don't we crack on just talking about Star Lake and the sort of the young people angle things, because this is something I think, for me, as an observer over this side of the pond, looking at the USA Eastern Territory, Star Lake is such an institution. We've been talking about Tom and how we'll miss Tom Scheibner, because he was a big part of that for 30 years, I think he told me it was. But also you do Star Search, you do the Future All Stars weekend. Tell us a little bit about how things are with those particular activities. And obviously everything's on hold at the moment,
Right. Yeah.
but you're going to be getting back to those in the years to come. What are your hopes for those kind of things, and how do you see it all going?
Yeah, so it's interesting, for all those things. I'm essentially just walking into them. You know what I mean? I didn't have to invent them. They were all kind of brought about by the team of Ron and Tom. Which is great. I kind of walk into a car that's that's moving. You know what I mean? So, but I think they've all been wildly successful. I don't want to say because of the name recognition of all of them, because Star Lake is certainly is a special thing. It's it has a specific kind of name in mind, and people, when they can think of, okay, Star Lake, you connect the dots of all the different guests that there's been and all the people that have gone through. So that's one that really kind of separates out from some other things. Future All Stars, which has been huge, for us, over the last 15 years or so. The Star Search thing has been going for 34 years. And really, they're all just, opportunities for the kids within our territory. Star Lake is for, a group of 150, 200 people. Future All Stars is a little bit smaller, opportunity, which is about, 60, 70 people. When you think about Star Search, for our territorial competition, we end up with around 1,000 people there, but then that is bigger and bigger if you take all the divisions and their activities. So it's really just a wonderful way of gathering in, small, medium, and very large, groups of people, and been, kind of a way for, for people to be motivated, to practice. I mean, I think there's nothing better than that deadline, right, of getting yourself to something.
Absolutely,
so especially for the Star Search thing there. So it's just a great opportunity for everyone. And I think, kind of moving forward, those things will have been a key cog in our existence for a long time, and there's no reason to kind of turn the corner on that, whatsoever. And so they're all very good things. We'll modify them slightly as the years go on, just to kind of fit with whatever we need, but all very successful, both in terms of building up musicians, building up young Christians, creating leaders, especially. When you think of all those things, I don't know the exact stats, and I kind of now wish I would have looked them up, but for our Future All Stars weekend that we've had, I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 people have played in the staff band at some point, who have come through that program before. You know what I mean? Right. So, which is really great. And when you look at the collection of young leaders, it's the same kind of group. You know what I mean? And one of the other things that we've done, I guess in the last 7 or 8 years, that started when I came to the music department, was we have a summer brass program, which has been around 15 young people, which have traveled around the territory, helped with music camps, helped taught. And when you look at our young stream of music leaders, regional music directors, a lot of people have come from from that group as well. So I think we're just trying to create as many opportunities as we can to create leaders, to create better musicians, to create better officers, to create better anything. We're just giving opportunities for leadership, and hope that opportunity is taken advantage of. So hopefully that's a good enough answer.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I think really, Ron, and we'll talk a little bit about Ron, I'm sure, but like kind of just a marketing genius, and kind of figuring out what will sell, what will be popular with people, and has had kind of figured out a way to make all those things special, for not only us but onlookers as well, to look at it and say, hey, that's really cool. That's that's something that's very exciting. I want to be a part of that. I want to come to the area to be a part of that. I want to come be a guest at that thing. And he, probably better than anybody else maybe in the history of Salvation Army music, has been able to capture that energy.
Yeah, sure. So Ron Wakes Norris, another institution from the USA East, and a long-time conductor of the New York Staff Band. We'll talk about the band in a few moments, but I don't know if I've said, everybody, but Derek, of course, is the Territorial Music Secretary for his part of the world, and so Star Lake and these programs fall under his remit. It's good to hear you're still excited about them, Derek, and you see the value in them. They cost a lot of money to put on, but it's all about investment, isn't it? Yeah. So it's not a waste of money. It's not a waste of anybody's time. You already mentioned the 20 kids coming through, future All-Stars, to the staff band, and I think not just for the kids, but the guys who get to go on staff as well, the adults at Star Lake, it changes their lives as well, doesn't it? So it's a really worthwhile thing. Yeah,
well, it's interesting. Sorry, just to hop into and talk about Star Lake, where it obviously is, for the students, for their development throughout the week, but also it is the way of giving our leaders more experience. You think about a lot of people that come that maybe they're from a smaller corps, where they have a band of 12 or 15 people, or something like that, and all of a sudden they're put in front of a group of 40 to lead. That's an extra level of professional development there. So you want to kind of feed both the leaders and all the students that are there, which certainly helps move us all forward.
Yeah, that's right. I think sometimes people are quite critical of the church and movements like the Salvation Army because we spend money on these things. But if you want a church to be great, if you want it to be full of great Christians and attract people and all that kind of thing, then you've got to invest the time, you've got to invest the energy in that. And long may it continue, Derek.
Yeah, and I think they often say too, you have to spend money to make money. And I think you do have to spend money to get anything good to come. You know what I mean? So I think you invest in something, you commit to it, and then you'll see fruit come out of that.
That's right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this live stream. We've got a few watching, which is fantastic. We've had a hello from, is that Jean? It is Jean and their daughter Emily, who are watching from Stowmarket. Jean and Adrian and their daughter Emily watching from Stowmarket. That's over here, not too far from us in Cambridge. And by the way, Glenn and Wanda Giles in Nova Scotia, Derek said, we're both welcome anytime.
There you go.
Shall we go tomorrow? I've got a free afternoon if you're up for it. Maybe not tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe not tomorrow. The 2 week required quarantine, might kind of dip into that a little.
You know what? It just might do. Thanks for that, Glenn and Wanda. We really appreciate that. If you're watching, leave us a comment or leave us a question. We'd love to hear from you, and particularly if you have anything you've always wanted to know about Derek, his shoe size, or what his favorite TV program is, anything like that. I'm sure there are no restrictions on what people can ask. Isn't that right, Derek?
Sure.
Good. Let's talk about the staff band, because the New York Staff Band is the oldest Salvation Army staff band. Is it 1887, something like that?
Yeah, 1887.
Putting you on the spot now. You did know that, didn't you?
I did.
And for a long time, it's been a very, very fine band. And I was just wondering, because you took over a few years back now from Ron Wakes Norris, both as in the Territorial Music Secretary capacity, but also as conductor of the staff band. How you've been trying to fill those very large boots that Ron has left. How long was he the bandmaster of the staff band?
24 years.
24 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about Manchester United Football Club, but it's like Alex Ferguson, the manager, after 20 odd years leaving Manchester United. The guy's an institution. I think Ron would have been held in high regard by many people. So how do you approach that when you come to take over from somebody who's been doing the job as long as he has?
Yeah. Well, I think the one great advantage I had in the situation is I worked for Ron for 5-6 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we worked together on a whole bunch of projects, and I was kind of the manager for the staff band before I became the bandmaster. So in terms of like the inner workings of it all, I'm not sure that anyone really knew it much better than I did. So that was helpful, in terms of kind of knowing how it all operated and everything. But honestly, I'm not sure I ever felt like really uncomfortable, about like kind of stepping into his shoes. And I think mainly it's just because of how supportive Ron is, and how
Right.
supportive he was, just kind of in my development, when I was younger, when I worked here, and then just early on in the days, doing the staff band, you know what I mean? So it's a lot to live up to, but I suppose I'd rather live with within those really high expectations that the band has set for itself, and that the leaders have set. So it wasn't really ever like super daunting in terms of stepping in for Ron, and I hope like that's not offensive in any way, but it's just because we work so closely together. And he was just so willing to kind of step beside me at all times, and kind of, hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And even after I took it over, there was a period of time where I was leading the band and he was still in the office, kind of thing,
Okay,
where we overlapped. So we'd be able to have those, those conversations about, different things. And it's really, really great. But, is there the undue amount of pressure to kind of keep the, on the front, leading edge of like the Salvation Army, band world, I suppose, you know what I mean? But that's just been part of, who we've been. So there's no real reason to stop that, you know what I mean? So, and even, now, like I could call Ron, in 20 minutes and, just chat about something.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's been a great sounding board for the last, 3.5 years. So I suppose that's an odd answer, not really feeling completely daunted by stepping into his shoes, mainly because I walked right next to him, when he was in those shoes, you know what I mean? So I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. And that kind of thing. But I'd be lying if I didn't say every once in a while I'll call Ron and say, you know what, I kind of wish you were still the boss and I was still the guy that was working down the hallway, because of his ability to navigate just about anything. And you can't replace the years, and the experience that I certainly don't have, at this point. But always grateful that he's been, kind of there right next to me, in my developmental stages, and then since I've been doing the band as well.
Great, yeah. What a great credit we're giving, or you're giving Ron as well. By saying that, because I think that's a hallmark of the man. Many people might not have. Might have wanted to walk out the door and say thanks very much, I'm off now, and never look back. But the fact that he's wanted to hang around a little bit longer just to give you that support is fantastic.
Well,
we really enjoyed meeting with him. He's just such a when I think of Ron, I think of somebody who's cool. The young people, like cool as in, I've never seen him get worked up. I don't know why, but he just seems to be unflappable, we would say, on the side of the pond. But sorry, what were we going to say?
No, I was going to say too, the other thing that has been really helpful, was that, we kind of had like another, long-standing institution, working in the music department. It was Ron and Tom for a really long time. And so when I took over, Tom was still here, you know what I mean? So if there were any questions that I had, or things that I didn't know, or needed some advice about something, Tom had been through all of those things, you know what I mean? So I could always go and say, hey, so what do you think about this scenario? What do you think about this? And always had wonderful advice, because he'd been through all the same battles that, that Ron had been through, all the same, years and that kind of thing. So I often, we kind of would joke every once in a while where we kind of treat each other both, when with Tom and I, that we were like each other's bosses, right? I was really his boss, but like, I would really go check with him all the time. Like, hey, so I want to try this. What do you think about it? He's like, well,
He was
do whatever you want, right? So, but it was just so valuable having just all those years of expertise and knowledge that I could go to at any point with questions. So, going back to your, the previous question about, filling shoes and that kind of thing, like I just came with a lot of information and continuous information, from Tom, where it was hard to not be prepared for just about any situation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's stick with one more thing I want to ask you about the band, and that's just
Yep.
about the future, really. And then we'll go to some questions which are hopefully coming in the comments. So if you're watching, do say hello in the chat and leave us a question, and we'll get to that in just a second. So my last question then, really, on the staff band is, about the future. What are your hopes and dreams? I mean, are there even any plans at the moment, Derek, for the band?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, obviously, like everyone, we've all been shut down, for the last 6 months or whatever it might be. And but we've tried to engage some members of the band throughout the summer or throughout this time, in our territorial worship services that we've had. So you've had like little groups of sextets play for different things,
Yeah.
or different guys and girls in the band playing solos for that kind of stuff. So we've tried to engage, obviously that's not everyone, but small groups of people to kind of keep I suppose the brand of the New York Staff Band, going in some respects, but then also contributing in a very practical way. So I think for the short term, yes, we do have plans of getting back together sometime in the near future. But it'll probably be a little bit of a staggered start with some small group, things and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think, kind of first and foremost, in my mind at the moment is figuring out how we can, I guess, develop resources and worship materials and that kind of thing that can be useful for core, as they're getting back to some sort of normal, but maybe they're not able to, to do all the things they once wanted to do. You know what I mean? So if that means we're recording a whole collection of, Hallelujah chorus accompaniments, so that people can use, okay, that's great. If it can be like solo pieces that can be used, for things or other small group, group projects. So I think there's a lot of those things that we can do, not as a full band, as a start, but just figuring out how we can really remain useful, relevant and practical, during the day. So I think practical is going to be the overall word for, kind of getting back together. I'd say there is a plan. There's a draft of an email in my draft folder right now to go out to the band. So maybe I shouldn't give the full amount of information.
I don't think you should.
This way.
No, I don't think you should.
But I think we're looking forward to doing some stuff, in the near future. But it'll have to be a little bit of a hybrid, version for a little bit of time, but continuously creating materials for the territory and beyond if people want to use it,
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that, Derek, because a lot of people think staff bands are all about being high and mighty and a little bit removed from everything, but actually an important part of their role is to resource the territory. Isn't that right? It's the same with the ISB over here and then the other staff bands around the world. But the weekend ministry, as we called it, going once a month to a different core is really important, and we can resource core that way and encourage people. And through the virtual ministry, there's been so much fantastic stuff, ranging from the absolute crazy to the absolutely mind-blowing, from the guys from Black Dyke and things like that, just the standard of playing. So the internet is awash with virtual ministry and virtual ways of encouraging each other, which is great. Got a few more questions coming in here, Derek, so let me read, see if I can get to the comments. Mark Cool is saying hello to you both. Hi, Mark. Thanks very much for that. Glad you're watching. I'm clicking on the comments button here, and it's not telling me the comments. You getting the comments there, Derek?
I've got a few that are in here. Let's see. I've got what's my favorite piece to play?
Yeah, answer that for us.
I don't know. I guess if it's in terms of a solo piece, for myself,
yes,
I always kind of go with my favorite cornet solo to play is Song of Exaltation, the Norm Bearcroft solo.
Oh, wow,
but I always kind of get to one of the first things I ever remember hearing in terms of a cornet trumpet player was the Principles album with the New York Staff Band with Phil Smith and Dudley Bright as the soloists.
Yeah, I got that album. Yeah,
and that was one of the solos on there. So I've always loved that, and so I guess I've been trying for 30 years to make it sound like Phil someday, but that's never going to happen, right?
No, you're going to need another 300, I think. Well,
probably.
Nothing on you, but Phil's
Yeah.
just on another planet.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He's an
Absolutely.
incredible player, and
Yeah.
another institution from the USAE. So
Yeah.
that question, I think, was from Diane. So thanks for that question, Diane. Can you see the rest of them there, Derek? Please keep going. You're just going to have to take over hosting until I.
Yeah,
can
that's
figure out
fine.
a way.
No, it's I was looking forward to at least less stressful day, of not hosting an interview, but here that goes.
No, I'm going to change that.
I've got a question from Phil Raymond. Hi, Phil, one of my friends.
Yeah.
What is Derek's record number of visits to the State Line Diner in one day? It's probably like one or two. Like I don't. Yeah. Like yes. I'm sure we could choose some other restaurants there. But
is it one or two?
I'm sure it's more than one.
Yeah, I think it must be two.
I'm sure it's more than one. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, more questions. We got another one from Glenn, who we've said hello to earlier. Let's see. Question for Derek: how would you get the band ready for a concert versus getting the band ready for recording? So,
great question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think in a lot of ways they're similar. You know what I mean? But I would say that you could probably be a little less prepared, for recording. As weird as that sounds, but like you do get more cracks than one, through recording something. So I recently, for us, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, we've our last two albums have been all CDs of brand new pieces, nothing ever been recorded before. Maybe not all written for us. I can think of at least one example in this conversation. But all things that hadn't been recorded before. So with some of those things, though, we haven't really gotten the music that far in advance. You know what I mean? So you kind of, you do a quick kind of work through and then figure out, kind of things you want to do in a hurry, knowing that, when you kind of get it ready to play, out, you probably would maybe take a little bit more time with it, not in the rush. So yeah, that's an interesting question, because like you tend to record stuff after it's been prepared, for a concert and for performance. But we've kind of done the opposite in some. I can think of it pretty recently, when we had a composers contest a few years back, and the winning piece was Fearless by Andrew Wainwright. Which is like 8.5 minutes long, something like that. And I think we had 3 rehearsals, or maybe 2, and then recorded. Right, that was kind of like the kind of the speed in which we had to do that. So it's a real quick study there. And then the same thing when we recorded King of the Seven Heavens by Philip Harper. We got it a few weeks in advance, rehearse a whole bunch, real intensely, and then go on and record that. You know what I mean? So I think it just kind of depends on what the piece is. If it's a something that's 20 minutes long, like obviously you can't do that. You have to build up the stamina to be able to play it multiple times in recordings. So I'd say you have to be at a very strong place physically to be able to record some of those things where maybe not as strong, just for a performance kind of situation. But we could do some very like boring conversations about like how I prepare myself for things, but I'm not sure we want to go there.
We'll save that for another time. That's fine. Yeah. I'm getting I can see the questions now, Derek. So let me just see if I can work through these. Ian Fell. Hi, Martin. Ian from Penge. Hi, Ian. Glad you're watching. Nice to see you. Howard Russell. Thanks for this question, Howard. Is anyone going to take over Shive's Vibes since Tom's promotion to Glory? It's been a great series. Yeah. What do you think about that, Derek?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have talked about that. Obviously we've through kind of the lockdown, we did some live chat things like this, via the staff band channel or whatever it might be. So I think we'll figure out something kind of going forward, and I doubt we'll have a continuous host, for that. But sure. I think we'll have some conversations that will come under the umbrella of Shive's Vibes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are thinking creatively, because you can't replace somebody with somebody else, can you? It just doesn't work that way. But it was a really successful series, and it's just great hearing the stories. Tom had a filing cabinet of a mind, didn't he? He just knew everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how he could remember all that stuff, but the stories, the information, Yeah, thanks for that question, Howard. So Mark Cool has sent in a question as well, and then after this question, Derek, let's get on to talking about composers and conductors and the collaboration between them both. So the question from Mark is interesting to see my friend Tom Dvoran's pieces on Proclamation. Proclamation is that the latest album or the one before?
Yeah, the latest one.
Latest one. How did that collaboration come about with Tom? He's asking.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. His piece "Living Power" is another one that was written for Enfield. So we got that. It was kind of in that category of pieces that had never been recorded before, but that weren't for us. So I was in the midst of trying to figure out my first recording with the staff band. So we wanted to find some things that hadn't been done before. So I had seen, little clips of that, from when Enfield played it. And then, kind of asked about getting the piece, so we played that for a little while and recorded, Living Power. And then once we were done with that, like I really enjoyed, doing that. It's a short, kind of feisty, piece, to go after something there. And then, kind of from that started a relationship, with Tom, just kind of going back and forth. So I wanted another concert opener kind of in the same vein, and had, hey, this is the tune I want. This is kind of the feel I want it to have. So I asked Tom, and, he came through with Proclamation, which has been, a really good piece that we used, probably for about a year, for a concert opener. But it all really started with, getting Living Power, and then kind of going from there. So that was the starting point. And he's been around. He's come for a few things. Like, he lives in the States now, so he's come to a few of our concerts and rehearsals. And he's friends with Dorothy Gates, who works in the department here. So we've been able to, go eat some meals, together and that kind of thing. So it's a good relationship. And I know, like, lots of connections he has to the Army in the UK. But being able to, kind of start a little bit of a connection here is great. So I've been able to connect with him on a few projects. But that's, most recently, getting that kind of commission from him is great. But that's how that started. So
thanks for answering that, Derek. Tom's a real talent, actually, isn't he?
Yeah.
And marvelous conductor, I think. And he's conducted a piece of mine, which I was really thrilled about. But that's a story for another day. But I tell you what, let's talk for a few minutes then on the relationship between a composer and a conductor, because I'm at one end of the spectrum on this, and you're at the other end, right? But
the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I can't write anything.
Right, So you might have dabbled in composition, and I also dabble in conducting, but basically we're one or the other. I for many years have been sending works into bands, and so I'm speaking from a composer's perspective. I find that when you send something into a band, you're very nervous as a composer, and then if the band likes the piece and they decide to program it, you are kind of simultaneously nervous and thrilled that it's going to be played. And I just wonder, as a conductor, are you aware of the sort of nervousness of composers sometimes? They're very touchy people sometimes, composers, easily offended. Please like my work, all that kind of thing, as I guess you could say some creative types are. I'm speaking certainly for myself. Are you aware of that tension a composer sometimes feels? And how do you go about encouraging a composer, that their piece is going to be great, and you can use it, and, you want to keep on producing works? We might throw into that the composers contest that you mentioned just a few moments ago, but this whole business of encouraging composers, is it something that you're about? Is that something you feel is important?
Yeah, so I guess I'll try to take a stab at a few of those elements, and if there's one I forget about, just hop back into it. But in terms of encouraging composers, most definitely, that is, I don't want to say it's a priority in my brain, but it's certainly something that I've wanted to do since I've been there. And I think it's another one of those I kind of wish I kept track of exactly what the numbers were. But I think since taking over the band, we've probably had around 40 pieces written for us, something like that, which seems like a good number.
Yeah,
so I'm really just definitely want to encourage the composers, but then I also want to encourage and kind of look at the fact that kind of some of the new contemporary songs and that kind of thing can be done in a way that that'll be very successful with a brass band. It doesn't always work, you know what I mean? But I think just trying to make the mix of those two things, go together has been a priority of mine to figure out how you connect, contemporary worship, to the brass band so that we can remain as relevant as possible. So I think, going back to like that practical, relevant, question from a long time ago, is, that's some part of me just wants to make sure I'm still kind of pushing the envelope in terms of what people, I don't want to say what they're looking for, but kind of that contemporary element of worship and that kind of stuff that we're also in the same way. So I figured the best way to do that was just to encourage composers, and especially young composers at the moment, to write things and to just go after it. And I figure in terms of asking people for pieces, for me, and I think there's obviously some part of that we'll get to, but it's really asking the right person for the right piece. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And making sure that you're not asking person X to write something where really they should be writing something that's piece A or whatever it might be. So something that's wildly different. So I can think of one like really good example of trying of matching up the right people with a piece is it was for our, we were sitting in commissioning probably 3 years ago or something like that. And, these weekends, like the band gets like one spot, to play, like, okay, you have one piece, and it's going to be an offertory or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I really want this piece, at this moment. And so it was Great Are You, Lord, the worship song that, is kind of out there now.
Okay.
And so, kind of thinking about what I wanted, and like I just knew that Joel Collier was the perfect person to write for it, because he has a great background in being able to do contemporary things. Great keyboard player, great brass player, all those things. I just knew would be perfect, that combination. And so, hey, I want this song, but you can throw everything in the world you want at it, because I just want it to be like that. Oh man, that was the special thing about that weekend. And like that worked out perfectly. Joel, it was exactly what I was looking for. It hit the spot like at the moment. And so like that's a good example of just kind of matching up the right person with the right project. So like that's one example of kind of going after someone for something specific. But I certainly get the nervousness of the composer thing. And I'd say some part of that is due to the fact that Dorothy Gates, her office is 15 feet away from mine, right? So I have daily conversations with a composer who is both accepting pieces for publication, and how that that reaction and that relationship is, but then also she gives pieces all the time for us to work on, or she's getting so I guess I'm kind of used to that conversation about being nervous about it working or not working, and composers being definitely tied to one thing that they wrote, or me wanting to do it slightly different. So I'm aware of that, but I figure it's best to just kind of encourage them by playing their stuff, and then being honest about it after the fact. You know what I mean? So if there's something that I got from a new composer and I like 80% of it, but maybe I won't play it because I don't like the other 20%, then just talk to the composer about the 20% that you don't necessarily like, and see if there's something that they might be willing to do to make sure that it works. You know what I mean? And I fully realize I'm aggravating to composers, too. You know what I mean? With it
in a good way,
in that desire to have things kind of a certain way. But usually, if I have an idea for something, it's kind of been fully developed in my head, where I'm looking for something very specific. You know what I mean? So,
well, Derek, I do feel, from my end of things, is it very much a collaboration. If I send something to you or to Steve Cobb or whoever, I'm usually very grateful for any feedback, and what you'll usually get is a version 2. And I think that in this age of Sibelius, that's very easy to do, isn't it? If 20% needs a rework, you don't have to rewrite all the parts and mess about with photocopiers and Tipex and cutting bits like we used to have to do in the old days. With Sibelius and music notation, we can do that. But from my end of things, I always appreciate the feedback. But I guess there will be composers who'll say, "What I've given you, that's it." And I guess it's more dangerous for you in that way when you ask for music, because really, if you ask for it, you're gonna have to use it, right, in one way or the other. But hopefully, you'll help shape it to what it needs to
Yeah.
be.
Well, I think one of the things about that, in terms of, yeah, if I ask someone to write something and they send it to me, like I guess you do feel pretty much obligated to play that. But I
Yeah,
think it does come back to that, what I just said a few moments ago, is asking the right person for the right
mm,
project. You know what I
yeah,
mean? To know that the thing that you're asking them to do is something that they can pull off,
mm,
right? So that's the first part. And then I guess to not be really ambiguous with what you are looking for either, and maybe I'm a little bit too directive, about like, hey, I want this, and that kind of thing. But I figure it's better just to put it out there,
yeah,
and have them react to that than,
mm,
kind of not saying something to them and then realizing that, the piece that they wrote that's 7 minutes long, you don't like it all. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's picking out the right person for the right project, and then being, I guess, as specific as you possibly can, with what you want in terms of tunes, in terms of style, in terms of
yeah,
the direction you want to go with something, to make sure that you get something that you'll really want to use. So
yeah,
I think in all the, like, really all the pieces that we've had over the last couple of years, I can't really think of one where it was just like I got it and we couldn't use it. You know what I mean? For
sure,
some reason or another. So I think a pretty good, like, success rate with
yeah,
that. But I think a part of it is too. I've asked a lot of my friends, to write stuff. So you have a different kind of relationship,
okay,
with
yeah,
with them than maybe you would if it was just kind of an acquaintance situation. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
when Andrew Wainwright has written something for me, I can say, hey Andrew, what about this or this? Any issue? What about with Marcus, who I'm friends with? What do you think about just changing this one bit? And
yeah.
ultimately, they may not change anything, but I feel like you can have that conversation, with them. So
Yeah, yeah. So, from what I'm hearing, Derek, is from your point of view, you're doing the homework, your end of things. You know what these guys can do and these girls can do, but also the relationship is key then, and the
yeah.
collaboration. I'm really pleased to hear that.
Well, I think,
In
sorry, Martin, what can I, one more thing. Sorry.
Yeah, please
I
do.
told
Yeah,
you you had to tell me to be quiet. But I think the other part is that you can challenge, these guys as well that may not have the opportunities all the time to write something like this, and to stretch them. So that's another way of just like encouraging, people in that way is,
mm,
maybe they've kind of lived in this zone because that's what they have to normally write for. And then, like, all of a sudden, you can write for us. That's something that can stretch them, a little bit. And I'd say I in no way need to stretch Dorothy, Gates, who works here. But just recently, last year, we had this idea of kind of doing a symphony, more or less for brass band. And so Dorothy took that on, but that ended up being in a 25-minute, piece of music that she did for the band, based
mm,
on Exodus. So that was probably the best in terms of like a collaboration,
yeah,
where it was like a big idea, and then she kind of rolled with it, but we'd had to go back and forth for a little bit, which I'm not sure she was 100% comfortable all the time with, in my my
yeah, yeah,
desire to be a part of the conversation.
mm,
But it's one of those things. It's the right person for the right project, and she can tell a story
yeah.
with her music. So it really worked very well.
Yeah, and how fortunate you are to have Dorothy not only on the team but also as a writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
For we like to think we gave her to you. You know that, don't you? But so we will take some of the credit for every
Sure.
success she has. Let's get to some questions that are coming in, Derek. So yeah, Phil Raymond said at least two. So that's the restaurant answers the restaurant question. Thanks for
Sure.
that, Phil.
Very
Um,
helpful. Very helpful.
yeah. Mark Cool was saying, thanks for the explanation. A pleasure, Mark. No problem. Thomas Quick is saying, greetings, Martin and Derek from Tom Kitchener in Ontario. And Tom is the guy with the radio station,
Yep.
which many of you will know about. So thanks for those comments, everybody. If you have a question for Derek or for me, leave us a comment and we'll give you a shout out. Or you can just say hello, or well, anything you like, really, as long as we can repeat it. Yeah, I'm sure that's understood by everybody. Okay, great. So leave us a comment and we'll get to that. So just continuing on for a little bit, Derek, on this sort of collaboration between conductor and composer. My understanding has always been that, you know, the composer kind of produces a blueprint, and then the conductor would, in a way, have to interpret that work. You know, so even whether it comes to tempi or whether it comes to the energy that a composer is hoping will be conveyed through a piece, you're the one who has to live with the end result. And how do you see the role of a conductor when you're presented with a brand, let's say a brand new composition? Are you looking to put your own stamp on it, shall we say, or do you always take this blueprint and run with what's there? How do you approach it when a new piece comes across your desk?
Yeah, so I think it'd be pretty similar to just the way in which I prepare myself for a piece that isn't new. You know what I mean? So if I was going to be, working on, let's say, like the present age or something like that, for the staff band, I would, I'd go and I'd spend some time listening to a few different recording options. I would, look at it with the score, kind of, make some notes and that kind of stuff. And then eventually I'd kind of put all the recordings away and just make it my own, right? So even with, something new that's coming out now, well, like especially with Sibelius Files, it'd be hard to exist before Sibelius Files, I think. But when you can hear those, you kind of get a feel for, okay, this is what it is. You can kind of, I guess, experiment a little bit. Even now, like I know you can go and you can adjust, you can adjust tempos, on, like, on Sibelius to like, okay, well that, how would that feel a little bit faster? How would that feel a little bit slower? Just to try out some of those things. And also, when I'm kind of in that getting to know you time, is that I will generally talk to the composers, about it, and especially, for ones that I have, a relationship with, that it's a free and easy conversation. It's a, 11 o'clock at night text to someone, hey, at this section, what are you looking for there? Is, please explain this transition so I can have a better feel for it. And then in the end, it is kind of my responsibility to figure out how I'm gonna do that, and the practical nature of it. But I'd say it's no different than, just preparing for a normal piece for rehearsal. Is you do kind of that exploration, period of time where you look at the score, you can listen to some recordings, you can talk to the composer, about different things or questions you might have, or, clarification of articulations and that kind of stuff. And then once that's kind of over with, then I really do see it as, then it's my job. You know what I mean? It's kind of in that architect, builder, phase, of things, where then it's kind of mine to run with and make it my own, and just, and then go from there. But yeah, in the early portion of time, I would certainly ask questions of the composers, and happy to have, input there. And a lot of them, especially new things that we've had now, I haven't even had to wait until the piece was finished, to be able to have that kind of collaboration on that kind of stuff. So if 2 minutes into the piece, like, hey, here's some motives I have, here's some different ideas, what do you think of those? Oh, that's great, okay, awesome. Like, I really like this line, maybe we can move that, and use that someplace else. So you can help, kind of shape some of that, with some people that you're going on. So I would say, definitely a collaboration there, to a point, for me, you know what I mean? And then at some point you do have to make it your own. You do have to kind of ingrain, the feeling of the whole piece, and all the tempos and all the feelings of it, or the things you're going to, explore. They have to be who you are. And know, and then go from there. If that's a reasonable answer.
That's great. I hope people are finding this interesting, because I think it's almost dark arts in a way. People don't really know the ins and outs of these things, do they? And from a composer's end of things, we often feel that we're sending things, especially to a publishing house. For me, it's the Salvation Army here in the UK. That's where I send pretty much all of my stuff. I've sent a couple of things to you, Derek, which you've very kindly published, you and Dorothy. That most of my stuff goes there, but it does feel sometimes like it's going into a black hole. Because you've no idea well, you get a letter of thanks and it's acknowledged, but in terms of whether it will see life, or see the light of day, you've no idea. And it's a real act of faith, I guess, on the part of the composer, isn't it? Just out of interest, on your side of the pond, how many pieces of brass works are actually coming into the department? Would you have an idea on that, or do we need to ask Dorothy?
We might need to ask Dorothy. I might need to text her and tell her to, chime in or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to really know because they don't always come. Like I get a collection of things that are, I guess, specifically for use for the staff band. So over the course of the year, you're probably talking like 20 or 30 pieces that may just come to me like for just that purpose. Then there's other things that come in for publication, to Dorothy, so they'll come there, instead. So it's
yeah,
a collection of things. And then obviously we've kind of mixed in a few of these like contest, things, where we've had an ABJ Christmas competition or another composers thing where, we'll get another 30 to 40, kind of submissions, for
right.
that, what I mean? So I suppose it's probably a hard number to put your hand on there, but
Yeah,
maybe, 75, 80,
yeah.
something like that, in the course of a year,
Okay.
for various reasons. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well, it's good to know that the stuff's coming in. We would have a big problem if nobody sent anything in, wouldn't
Yeah.
we? So
Yeah.
we do want to encourage all the composers out there. And by the way, I just would love to see a lot more Dorothy Gates. I'd love to see a lot more female composers in the
Yeah.
Salvation Army. I don't know what's going on. It might be to do with our history or who knows what. But if you're a girl out there, a woman, and you write music, look, I'm putting Derek on the line here. Send him something. I'm sure he'll look at it. So, Derek, we might have people who are not Salvation Army with Salvation Army connections. I'm just thinking about the Music Council sort of process, and how things actually get published. For non-Salvation Army people, and maybe for composers who are thinking about sending in things, what's the process for getting something published by the USA Eastern Territory?
Yeah. So essentially, like we take kind of the things that come in, and most notably they come to Dorothy. That's kind of where they end up. Some of them come to me if they're for the band, and then most times it'll kind of come with the note like, hey, I'm sending this to you, for the purposes of being published, and other times it's for performance. So we kind of mix those two things together. If it's something that was sent just for performance, we would probably just send a note and say, hey, what would you think about us publishing, this, and kind of go from there. And then obviously the ones that were sent in for that purpose, we know that they're interested in publishing.
Mm,
So generally speaking, every once in it's not like a scheduled time, but every once in a while, me and Dorothy will sit in my office and go through, here's all the pieces that we have, that kind of thing. And then, for ones that we already have recordings of, we can, we're kind of set to be able to listen to those. And for things that come in that we'd like to, go through the process of Music Council and that kind of stuff, the staff band will record that and get it ready. So we'll take a look at the list of pieces that come in, and we won't take every single piece to Music Council, but ones that we kind of evaluate as being something as a possibility, we'll take it to our territorial music council, which is a collection of, it's probably all total, 11 or 12 people that are on the music council. So a
right.
few from the music department, and there are then some from the trade department here, and then a mix of some other people, around the building.
Yeah.
So we'll go through, and let's say we have 10 pieces to listen to on that day. So
Mm,
we'll all sit and listen to it. We have, kind of score sheets that we have to fill out and evaluate. And if it, it gets above a certain number, then it'll get approved for publication. And if
mm,
it doesn't, it doesn't. And then we kind of put it in that pile. So it's
I
kind of,
see.
that's not super simple. I think it's very similar to the UK and what they do there.
Yeah.
But things will get gathered in through myself or Dorothy or anyone else in the department.
Mm,
Dorothy and I will sit, together and kind of evaluate those in a first run. We'll decide what things need to be recorded by the band, so we can take them to Music Council, then go on Music Council, take the vote, and then see where that stands.
yeah.
And sometimes there are pieces that both Dorothy and I thought that absolutely should be published that won't pass, because just kind of the well-rounded group that we have in the room.
Mm,
Will think that maybe it's too much for just the band people, or that kind of whatever it might be.
mm, yeah.
And then there's other times where there's something that the opposite is true as well. You know what I mean? So that's a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of the process. So
Yeah.
in terms of getting something published in the USA Eastern Territory, I'd say send it to Dorothy, because that's kind of her wheelhouse of keeping track of those things. making sure it kind of stays on the path to getting publication. And then the wonderful thing is that Dorothy is one of the most like thorough human beings alive, in terms of these compositions. So even if something comes in that doesn't get published, a lot of times, she'll reach out with feedback to them about how to make things better or what they could do, which is an educational, point as well, there for people. So, and I think generally she's happy to do that. There's some times where she's probably under the gun and can't, do that. But the idea of mentoring people is very, very important, to her. So that's a good thing that she does.
That's good to hear. And thanks for that insight into the process, as you guys might say. And because again, it's not cloak and dagger or anything, but we really do have to test the sort of the validity of music that comes in, don't we? It needs to have a spiritual basis. It needs to be programmable. I guess there's all kinds of criteria. We can't just leave it all to somebody like yourself, Derek. It's good that it is, to use your phrase, a well-rounded team of people. It should be 12. You said 11 or 12. It should be 12 because that's scriptural. So make sure it's 12, please.
I'm pretty sure it's 12. I'm pretty sure it's 12. So I think the other thing, Martin, in there too, with the even the composer contest things, I think there are a lot of times where people are just uncomfortable, like maybe sending the music directly to me, or to Dorothy, or to Steve, Cobb, or Andrew Blythe, whatever it might be. Where if all of a sudden you're just submitting it through a website, I think it does kind of empower people to go and do that, because you're not personally having to email it, to them. And we look at it without the names attached to it, as well, and that kind of thing. So I think that's probably been helpful of getting more people that you don't know to send in pieces, because there's just that ease of just like, oh, I can just submit it here and walk away. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know if it's really been helpful, but I just assume that maybe it was helpful.
I definitely think it has been. Are there any more plans for composer contests from your territory, Derek?
Yeah. So we're in the midst of one now. So there is like an open composers contest happening now that I guess ends somewhere around September 1st, I think. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure how many submissions we have at this point. I haven't really gone in and looked at it yet, but I guess sometime in the near future we will. So I know of a couple of people that have sent in pieces. So there's one actively happening now. So if you have a desire to send in a piece, you can go on to nysb.org and go to kind of the submission area there and send in any pieces that you want. There's no restrictions on this one. I think there's a time limit, but it's it's not like American Band Journal scoring or anything. It's just like whatever you kind of want. So, but go to nysb.org, check those out, and then. So that's the most recent one, but I'm sure we'll have some other ones in the future. Why not? They seem to have worked so far.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. Thanks, and thanks for giving the link as well, because people can go and check that out. Fantastic. Let me just check on the comments here. Thomas Quick, we mentioned you before. That's right. So we've got Linda Brinkman Vermeij. I think that must be. Yeah, she's from the Netherlands. Yeah. So I probably just totally butchered your name, Linda. Sorry about that. Linda says, hello from Netherlands, Cor Dordrecht. Question, if you include melodies, do you think of them before writing, or has it happened that a melody comes in mind while writing to add to it? I'm not sure quite what you're getting at there, Linda, but with Salvation Army music, I think that's a composer question, Derek, so let me quickly
absolutely.
Just give a response to that. With Salvation Army music, we live by what the songwriters do. Every single piece of brass music that's published by the Salvation Army, don't quote me, but there are some exceptions actually, but most of the time we base our works on a song, a spiritual song, a song from the Christian church, and that can be a Salvation Army song, or one we spoke about contemporary music as well from outside of the Salvation Army. So in terms of thinking of a melody, you've often been given the melody, and my approach, and I think other composers as well, is to take that melody and look for the motifs within it and build a work around it. But that work needs to be your foundation, or work. Sometimes you can have two or three if it's a selection or a medley or whatever. So I hope that gives a little bit of an answer to your question, and apologies if it didn't. And then Mark Cool has come back. He will make this the last question of the night. Mark, we are lucky. He says we're lucky enough to have lots of invaluable manuscripts in our archives at SPNS or R. Smith and Company by such composers as Eric Ball, RSA, Gilbert Vinter. Is this something that may not exist for pieces composed today using Sibelius? Do you do any handwritten sketches, or do you go directly onto Sibelius, and do you keep an initial print out for posterity? Okay, another composer question, I think. I'll answer the second part of your question there, Mark, which is, do I do handwritten sketches? Yes, I do. Have I got my sketchbook here? It's a question. No, I think it's downstairs. But I have a sketchbook, and also one of these is very handy in the 21st century because you can use the voice recorder thing. And people have heard me say this before, but I can stand in the street, and when the inspiration comes, because it always comes when you don't expect it, I just make sure nobody's looking and then sing into my mobile phone a little melody or a little motif or something. And then when I get back home, I can park that. Do I print stuff out for prosperity? Not really, because there's no need to, and you know, you have to think of the environment and things like that these days. But if I get something published by Derek's happy crew over there in the USA East, they usually will send me a completed score and parts. Isn't that right, Derek? It's kind of a, I guess it's a kind of thank you, isn't it, to the composer? So yeah, you end up with one for prosperity that way. So hope that answers your question. Well, everybody, thanks very much for tuning in tonight to my page, and I hope you find these chats helpful. I just want to tell you about a quick couple of ideas. First of all, let me tell you about the next chat that's coming up. I'm just going to get this on screen for you all. In 2 weeks' time, so we'll be back on a Tuesday evening, the 1st of September, 7 p.m. over here in the UK, or 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be chatting with Territorial Music Secretary Craig Lewis from the Canada and Bermuda Territory. He's a great guy, Derek, isn't that right?
Yep, we're good friends. So we
absolutely
we are both left-handed golfers, so we share that together. And
I'm sorry you've had to endure that that particular condition, but anyway, yeah. So in 2 weeks' time, Craig Lewis, and then I'm gonna have another one 2 weeks after that. But then, because I'm in my part of the world, things are kind of heading back towards, people are back to work and things like that. I'm going to change these live chats to a weekend event, and I think I'm going to call it Sunday Night Live, and they're going to be on Sunday evenings. It'll probably be 9 or 10 p.m. Over here in the UK, and I just want to give you a heads up on that, because I hope you will support that. I've got 3 or 4 people lined up for chats. I'm not going to call them interviews, they're chats really, in the coming weeks and months, and we've got some really, really stellar people coming on board, and I'm so grateful to guys like Derek tonight and Craig in a couple of weeks' time, and all the ones that I've spoken to for previously, for giving up their time, because I know, Derek, you're a very busy man, and all of these guys are busy people. So Derek, let me just say to you, thanks very much for your time today, and we'll be keeping you in prayer. Keep up the good work with the New York Staff Band and in the USA East, and every blessing to you, and thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Martin, and always a pleasure to talk to someone, you know, very like-minded in mission and faith and everything, and just say to you, you know, keep the music coming when you have the time, and yeah, the New York Staff Band is always excited to have a new piece from Martin Cordner. So
hey,
there you go.
You're very kind. Thanks very much, Derek. I'll bear that in mind. You know, I've not written very much at all in the last 4 or 5 months, because life has been very busy for us, but I'm hoping to get back to it soon. So thanks everybody for watching. Derek and I are just going to give you a lovely wave, and we will see you in the next one. God bless. Thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in.